Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jumping in an Elevator, the podcast where I, Mike, from the YouTube channel MicsMike, you may be aware of it, you might not be, and that's fine. I look into the things that you want to know more about, but you can't be bothered researching them yourselves. I get it. Life is busy. You have to get that latte. You have to go outside for 2 minutes. I get it. I've been there too. But now I'm an employee, and I am going to be Employee of the Month. Today's episode is about facial recognition. And before we get into that, I need to give a little special welcome. I've done the general welcome. You've all been welcomed. Special welcome to Check's Notes, the chainsaw with 2 E's. Hello, the chainsaw. How are you doing today? Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for becoming a level 3 patron. If you're a level 3 patron, you get a little shout out, a little special welcome to the episode, and all the girls are going to hear this. Chainsaw, I hope that you have a delicious day, right? I hope you have a day that's just like when you drink the water, it tastes like slightly minty. And I know that for some people that's not ideal, but for me that's ideal. That sounds like a good time if the water's minty. I hope your water's minty today, Chainsaw. And to everyone else that's become patrons in the last week, I really appreciate it. I expected like maybe 1 or 2, not the bunch of you that did it, so I really appreciate it. Thanks, girls. All right, so as I said, the topic for this podcast is facial recognition. Oh, the research that I did this week. I know I spilled. I wrote out my little script and I was like, hang on a second. This could be published and put in the bloody, I don't know, I was going to say West Australian, but I don't think you know what that is. It's like the state newspaper. Let me put this shit on bloody Guardian. Let the girls eat it up internationally. And I know I'm serving right now. I just saw myself in the little self-reflection thing. Not me calling the viewfinder the self-reflection thing. Yeah, I'm self-reflecting and I can see myself and I look good. I added an extra light up top, so I'm a little bit more blue. And a blue and a red. I don't know. Why do I sing Taylor Swift lyrics in every single episode of this podcast? What is wrong with me? Anyway. So, when I say facial recognition, I came up with the idea for the episode around the same time that I saw that picture of Khloe Kardashian. You might know the one. I'm thinking of the one where it was all over Twitter for some reason that she had uploaded a picture on Instagram and it looks nothing like her. And granted, she had you could tell she'd spent a few minutes in the Facetune app, double-digit numbers of minutes, just changing things about her face. You know what? Power to her. You do what you need to do, sis. Okay? Got me thinking. What would happen if Miss Khloe Kardashian had plastic surgery and she tried to unlock the iPhone 11 of hers? Because we all know she's not on iPhone X. I know she's got the hookup. She's got the iPhone 11. She's probably already got the iPhone 13. Hasn't even been announced, but I know she's got it. What happens when she lifts up that phone and she's like, oh, Miss iPhone 13 said, who this bitch? Or does it? What about if there's some kind of physical obstruction, like an eye patch or a face mask? How does that affect it? How does it work? What about Instagram and Snapchat filters and all that kind of stuff? How does it relate to government surveillance? We're going to spill, ladies, so let's get into it, yeah. So we have to start with the overall question of how does facial recognition work? Well, you got a face, and Miss Robot is going to recognize it, right? It's in the name, and I'm obsessed with that. I found a really beautiful explanation. Beautiful is not the word, but I'm going to let Ian have this one. Ian wrote an article for The Guardian, and it's fantastic. I'm going to pick some bits from it to explain facial recognition to the people. His stance, when I was reading through it, he was very much like, iRobot, the computer's coming for us, unstan facial recognition. And I get it. And I'm there with you, Ian. Because I would say before I researched facial recognition, I was kind of like, yeah, I'll get on and do the Bella Hadid filter on Instagram stories. And if you follow me, you know I love a good Bella Hadid Instagram filter story. However, apart from that, not a big fan. I use Face ID. That pushed myself to use Face ID. Never used it on any other phone or anything like that before. I don't use Windows Hello or anything like that. I don't like giving companies my biometric data. And it all kind of started when Facebook all of a sudden was like, if you upload a photo, it'll be like, do you want to tag blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. How do you know that's blah, blah, blah? Okay, if I've got my mobile phone, my little Face ID, hello, I've just lifted my phone, it's like, hey bitch, let me unlock bitch. Cool, thank you for that, Miss Face ID. My understanding of Face ID is that my face vector, which we'll get to in a second, is stored locally on the device. It's not in the cloud. Whereas Facebook, I never opted into giving Facebook my biometric data, and yet Miss Ma'am is like telling people when they take photos of me, they're like, do you want to tag Michael Messenio? No, the fuck, I don't want the tag in there. I'm going to untag that shit straight away. But also, who gave you the permission to do that? So is my face vector just stored in your server somewhere? The girlies can hack. They can probably hack my phone to get my vector anyway. But I mean, like, it's so much easier to hack the cloud, the servers. I'm not about it. This episode is basically anti-Facebook, but what the hell is new? I feel like I do that in every episode. After thinking about that Facebook example, I just kind of spiraled. I was like, the big F kind of sus. The big blue F in the big blue house kind of sus. We don't like that. And it made me think about, the representations of facial recognition software in movies and all that kind of thing in TV, and how it's almost always used to show what happens when it goes wrong. And it's weird because I remember watching these movies and being like, haha, that's impossible. And now I'm like, I feel uneasy. U-N-E-Z, uneasy. Because that shit's coming to life. You see news stories of facial recognition being used in China to racially profile people, which is absolutely terrifying. And then apparently it's also used in classrooms to scan the kids' faces to check that they're concentrating. Oh my God. Imagine if you had that. If I had that while at uni and the lecturer had like a face scan on me during that 8 a.m. Friday lecture engineering class, oh, absolutely not. I was slumbering. I was dozing. I was catching up on that sleep. If they had a little like alarm thing that went off every time that I lost concentration, it'd basically be going the whole time. It'd be giving Morse code. It'd be like, ding, ding. You know what I mean? Who the hell's paying attention to 8 a.m. lecture? Why were there even 8 a.m. lectures? And I can reconcile, okay, it seems like reconcile is the word of the day. I can reconcile an 8 a.m. lecture if it's also online. But these girls had the audacity to make the lectures compulsory at 8 a.m. And I lived like a 2-hour, 15-minute journey from the university, including parking and traffic. So I had to get up at like 5:15 for a crusty 8 a.m. lecture that I learnt nothing because the lecture kind of sucked. I just needed the notes. However, it was a compulsory lecture anyway. Alrighty, so let's get into our high level understanding of facial recognition from Mr. Ian at The Guardian. He says the first part is training a computer to recognize a face. And it's a little algorithm deep neural network moment. And we just love an algorithm, love the word, love the concept, love the technology, obsessed with the results. So just quickly, an artificial neural network, an ANN, an AN with an E without the E, so just basically AN without the E, is kind of like a simulated brain. I guess the simplest explanation is that there's 3 parts, the input, output, and the hidden processes in the middle. And I've got a little quote from the Journal of Environmental Management on Science Direct. Love that. And they say, ANN is a computational model that consists of several processing elements that receive inputs and deliver outputs based on their predefined activation functions. So basically, it's like a black box function. And a black box function is where you know the inputs, you know the outputs, you don't know what the fuck is going on in here on this day in the middle. And for our sake, we don't need to know. We just know that there's pitches that are going into this algorithm or this deep neural network, whatever, and then it's coming out with something. And what is that something? The next step is the recognition part, which is the scary part. The pink one's so terrifying. A neural network is fed a series of face pictures and learns to tell them apart using context clues, such as distance between the eyes. So at this point, we're talking about 2D pictures. So it just goes, sends the picture to the computer looks at it, zooms in on people's faces, works out, okay, this eye is this far along from this eye, and then it gives all these data points to that face. So after it does that, it outputs a vector for each face. So think about this for a second. The vector is a string of numbers that identifies the person amongst the set. So congratulations, you are in fact just a number. You're not just a number, bitch, you are a number. Half of America, or half of the US, is in the facial recognition database. So they've got hundreds of millions of faces in there, and it's just numbers. Boots the house down, Charlie XCX, come on season 6, let's get sickening. You're just a number. So in applications of facial recognition software, the way that I'm just kind of blurring that word into one phrase now, in applications, the vector is compared to a database. And I've got a fun example. Apparently Taylor Swift's security team used facial recognition to find stalkers at her concerts. So what they would be doing is that they would be using the video footage of people walking into the stadiums, taking snapshots, sending them to the computer. Computer gives a vector. Then the vectors are run through the database of stalkers or whatever. And then if a match is above a certain threshold amount, then they would pull that person aside or like keep track of that person or monitor what they're doing. So you're going to a Taylor Swift concert, you have no idea that they're using facial recognition to detect if you're one of Taylor's known stalkers. Spill. That seems like a logical application of the software, but at the same time, it's kind of invasive because you didn't opt into that. Although probably if you read the terms and conditions of the ticket, somewhere it's going to be like, Miss Taylor's team reserves the right to scan your face or some shit like that. Not in those exact words, but you know what I mean. Thinking about the fact that there's hundreds of millions of people in the United States that have their face scanned into the facial recognition database and they don't know. It's given me spook. It's given me very much spook because they didn't opt into that. And yet they do be vectorized in the data set. Let's go a little bit deeper. 3D face recognition. So we just talked about 2D. 3D face recognition uses distinctive features of the face to identify the subject. So I went over to How Stuff Works, which is a great website, as we know, and it gave me some examples. It says 3D face recognition uses rigid tissue and bone, eye socket curves, and nose and chin geometry, which makes sense because everyone's face is different. You might have people who have the same distance between their eyes, but just because they have the same distance between their eyes doesn't mean they're going to have the same chin dimensions or eye socket dimensions. So you can immediately tell that 3D is going to be more accurate because it's so much more data, which raises one of the problems because there's so much more data and so much processing. If you have a picture of an intersection and there's 100 people there and you're doing a 2D scan, compare that with a 3D scan where you're scanning every single face three-dimensionally, looking for all those chins. That's a lot of chins. That's a lot of eye sockets. Times 2, that's all the eye sockets. What a pain. Don't even bother with the eye sockets because you have to times 2. Just go for the chin. There's only one on each face. So my hypothesis is that Face ID uses 3D facial recognition because when you start your iPhone for the first time and you have to do like all the turning to left and right, up and down shit, that feels very much 3D. And also because if I lift my phone up here, it can unlock. And I don't think it'd be able to do that if it was just 2D because the angle of detection for 3D is 90 degrees, but the angle of detection for 2D is 35 degrees from the center. So if my phone was 2D, it could only detect up until about here, but it can kind of detect out here and at different angles. So using the extra depth in the 3D analysis, 3D facial recognition works better in low light because it's not dependent on one image. It's the image and the depth of the face. So you can use all these other different things to work out if the person is the person that you think it is, which I will get to later when I'm talking about obstructions. So masks and eye patches and all that kind of stuff. So there are a bunch of companies working on improving the accuracy of database matching using things such as skin surface texture analysis, which is, they call it a skin print. Makes me think of pink print, obviously. The pink print, the skin print. This shit scares me. I do not like it. I know Facebook is somehow responsible. Every time I come across some shady tech, I'm like, I know Facebook is somehow involved. And what do you know? She is involved. Of course she's involved. So what happens is they turn the patch of skin into a model mesh that lets you see and document specific lines and pores. One of the problems with 2D and a little bit of a problem with 3D is twins. Because if you have twins, they have the same facial structure, like if they're identical twins. And you can't detect them, you can't detect the difference at a high enough confidence percentage or normal facial recognition. But with this skin print stuff, you can look at the pores and the lines and you can tell who's who. It's given me spook We're not even in October anymore and I'm getting like Halloween spook from this. Apparently to get around the skin print systems, you can wear sunscreen and wear glasses to distort your eye socket. And what do you know? It all comes back down to SPF, girls. Wear sunscreen. At the end of the day, you can save your skin, you can age backwards like moi, and you can defy the crusty trying to steal your biometric data with the skin print just by slapping on some SPF. Winning all round. So now let's talk some more about uses of facial recognition in social media, Instagram and Snapchat filters. I kind of fluctuate on the spook with these. Sometimes I'm like, I absolutely hate this. I want to delete this app because the thought of this big ass company having my biometric data, I just know Mark Zuckerberg's storing my face somewhere. Where is it, Mark? Where are you storing my face? Where's the database? Let me in. Let me wipe my face from your little storage container that you're storing my face in. Giving me Faceless Man. Game of Thrones Arya season 7, where she went to the rip-off Venice and she did all that shit to exchange the faces. That's what Mark Zuckerberg's going to do. He's going to steal my face. And I just willingly give it up to use the Bella Hadid filter. Sometimes I'm like, I absolutely hate this. And other times I'm like, yeah, you know what? They can have this data so I can have the filter. It's an exchange. We did a trade. I traded my privacy for the Bella Hadid filter. And sometimes that feels like a valid trade. I Googled Instagram facial recognition and the first thing that came up, bitch. Instagram could face up to $500 billion in fines, in class action lawsuit alleging it illegally harvested biometric data. That's from August this year. And this is where the spill starts, ladies and ladies and ladies and ladies. And let's get into it. In the article, it mentions that in July, Facebook offered $650 million to settle a similar lawsuit alleging its photo tagging collected biometric data without users' consent. Did I just not say that shit? I thought the lawsuit would be about filters in stories. But apparently, it's suggesting Instagram creates profiles of people in photos in a similar way to Facebook, but you just don't know about it. And Instagram came back and they said this is not true, there's no facial recognition, but I'm not having it. It further alleges that Facebook uses Instagram to add photos to its recognition database to use across all of its products. That bitch crusty. I knew that big blue F was dodgy from the start. F for flop. Flop book. In terms of how the filters work, it's computer vision. So it's kind of the same stuff that I was talking about before, working out where the face is and applying the filter cosmetics or functions. So it's kind of like if facial recognition is detecting the face and recognizing the face and comparing it to the database, the filters kind of just do the first bit, the detecting the face, and then you can go into, I think it's called Spark AR Studio or something, and you can make your own filters and put stuff all over the detected face or around the detected face, which is cool. It's cool as long as it's not using your data. The crazy thing is that this all happens on your phone, which goes to show how powerful phones are. This thing, I'm tapping my phone for the audio people. That thing is so powerful. It's outrageous. If you think about it, these filters are taking 30 photos of your face per second to detect where your face is. 30 photos per second. And those photos are not being stored on your phone. They're being processed. It takes the photo, detects where your face is. That information is passed to Facebook where the filter is introduced. And then the filter is shown to you on your face on the screen to you. So it goes from camera, data coming from Instagram, those two things interacting, showing on the screen and you seeing it 30 times a second. That's insane. It's so crazy. Oh my God. Phones are so powerful. That's kind of the moral of the story here. The actual technology that does the face detecting is called Deep Mask or Sharp Mask, which are, you guessed it, Facebook tools. I reiterate, F the big F. She's giving me the big spook, the pink one so terrify, the blue one so terrify. Okay, the fact that I am saying pink and blue and I'm wearing blue and it's a pink LED lighting moment. I just called myself scary and yeah, I'm right and I should say it and I did say it and I was right for saying that. What I was saying about the whole 30 photos per second thing, that's so cool to me. And I'm fine with facial detection in this kind of like cosmetic way, as long as the facial information is not stored, which I don't think it is, but I can't be sure. The girls could honestly be storing that shit and sending it to Mars for all I know. What about the questions that I mentioned at the start? The ones that involve changes to your face, such as wearing an eye patch or a face mask or getting plastic surgery, or what if you used a cardboard cutout to scan the Face ID thing? Okay, immediately that would not work because it needs to be 3D, which raises the question of, if you had a styrofoam head cut to the proportions of my face, right? Could it get into my phone? If it was like painted or used some kind of special like latex thing, could it get into my phone? Could a really close wax sculpture of a celebrity be able to get into their phone? It's giving me very much Mission Impossible, but we'll get to that in a second. Physical disruptions to the image. Disruption is not the word. Obstructions, physical obstructions to the image are interesting because my phone unlocks if I'm wearing these glasses. Hold on, just my normal reading glasses. In pretty much any position. But if I'm outside and I'm wearing sunglasses and a hat, it pretty much never unlocks. But if I'm wearing just sunglasses, it sometimes unlocks. And if I'm wearing just a hat, it pretty much always unlocks. So you can tell that it's using context clues to kind of add up an image. Since facial recognition uses the contours of your face to work out if it's you, if you can't see the contours and make up an acceptable match percentage, it won't unlock. So that's why when the 5.2, when the 5.2 started going feral and everyone had masks on and you couldn't get into your iPhones quickly because your iPhone couldn't see the contours of your face properly. There is a way to get around that, which we'll get to in a second. The way that I've said, I'll get to that in a second, probably bloody 10 times this episode already. But we are getting to those things, so I'm not lying or anything like that. So Apple allows for you to set up an alternate appearance feature. So without access to all the features, it'll scrutinize the other features for a higher match percentage. So those two things there are kind of unrelated, but I put them together because they kind of solve the problem in two ways. You can actually add another face to your phone. I'm sure you can do this on Android as well. Like if I'm going to be wearing an eye patch or something because I did something to my eye, then I can add an alternate face to my scan thing and it'll let me in. Let me in! Like that lady on the bus going like, oh. That was probably the worst explanation in the world. But if you know it, you know it. And if you don't, I'm not going to try and explain it. Capiche? What about the thing about the mask? So they did a whole bunch of research. And apparently if you pull a mask half off your face, your phone will let you in because it can see some of the contours around your mouth and your nose. And it's adding that with the eyes to work out if it's you. If it can't see your full mouth or your full nose, it'll scrutinize your eyes harder to work out if it's you and add up to an acceptable match percentage. You know what I mean? It's smart. This shit is smart. The girls know what they're doing. And this technology's been around for a few years, but I feel like in the last 3-4 years, it's really ramped up in accuracy and use as well, which is equal parts cool and frightening. So basically, with a facial obstruction, it can work, but it doesn't mean it will work 100% of the time. And Apple also actually released a patch to allow you to use your passcode almost immediately after picking up your phone instead of waiting for the Face ID to fail. So with that, they're pretty much saying that this technology is good enough up to a point, but we're not going to release some hacky thing to let you into your phone and bypass security when we can just make sure that you failed Face ID faster if you're wearing a mask, which is kind of smart, to be honest. When I was mentioning before about the cutouts being Mission Impossible, I might just jump into and talk about that now. So in Mission Impossible, I'm pretty sure there's like a scene in almost all of them where the tech guy, I can't remember who plays the tech guy in the most recent one. The name will come to me later. They scan the bad guy's face, or they scan someone's face that they want to impersonate, and then it creates a mask and they wear that mask and they get in. So then I was thinking, that's movie haha sci-fi not possible. But is it not possible? Because if you have skin that matches the person's skin and you've worked out the exact dimensions of their face and you've put this fake skin around their face, why would it not work? Like facial recognition is good, but it's not perfect. and it goes up to an acceptable confidence percentage. So if your fake face can get up to an acceptable enough percentage, you should be able to get into the person's stuff. That's frightening, but also really cool. I love those movies when they have ridiculous technology. I loved it when I was younger, and I still love it. And I remember thinking, haha, that will never happen. But it's happening. It's happening right now. Ugh. What about plastic surgery? I really like this question answer interaction from Quora. So the question was, I was just wondering, will the iPhone X be able to recognize a user who has done plastic surgery on his face? And the answer, I'm going to kind of produce a tone that I think they wrote this in. Of course it won't work, space question. What's there to wonder, space question? If someone has changed the face, then you wouldn't recognize them, or even if it's the small one, like a nose job, you would find something odd about it, so the phone will too. But Bestie did kind of spill there, because if someone gets plastic surgery and you're looking at them and you're like, you look a little bit different, your phone that's tuned into how you look is going to be like, hold on, something's up. So you probably have to reset the facial recognition, the Face ID. There's a dog that's been barking since I started recording this podcast, pretty much to the minute. So apologies if you can hear that dog. Like, it did not bark the whole day, and I've been in this chair pretty much for the last 72 hours. The second I sat down to record, it started barking. I just know Facebook's somehow responsible. What about, how does plastic surgery impact how you sit in a government's facial recognition database? Because if you travel overseas for surgery and return with a different face, do you have to go through a whole bunch of shit to verify that it's you? Big question. Because I don't know if Australia does this, probably. But I was reading about the states, like border control and all that kind of stuff, and they scan your face on your way in. So if you went out, got surgery, and came back in with a different face with the same passport, they're going to be like, uh-oh, something's up. So they probably have to change the picture in the database. But do you consent to that, or do they just do that shit anyway? Governments be doing tons of crazy shit. Obviously, the easiest way for governments to get around facial differences is to increase their biometric data scans to the highest level and take blood samples and compare these with a database. But obviously that is so incredibly invasive. But I mean, at the same time, how do we know they don't already have a blood sample? Not this. So I thought it'd be fun to end on talking about some movies, TV shows with facial recognition. So obviously I've already talked about Mission Impossible. There's retina scans in Blade Runner, and pretty much any kind of spy movie, I swear there's like retina scans. And I love a retina scan. Let me scan my retina. Facial recognition in Ex Machina, which was a scary movie. Spook. It gave me the spook. Not the Facebook spook, but it gave me like the regular spook. And then another one from Mission Impossible is the glasses. So sometimes Tom Cruise will be walking around. I might be getting my movies mixed up here, but I think it's Mission Impossible. You have the glasses on and he's looking at people and it's matching the people walking past him to a database that's being controlled by the tech guy back in the team van or back in the lair or something like that. That's another piece of tech that I remember thinking, haha, that's awesome, totally unachievable. And then Google Glass started being a thing, and then I'm pretty sure that flopped and got booted. But I was reading, and apparently there's a company that's making these glasses that can detect faces and store faces and compare like faces to a database. Frightening. And then there's also another company that's doing the reverse. So if you're wearing their special glasses, the facial recognition gets like confused. So it kind of like masks your face and gives you the face of someone else. So you could have like glasses on, it scans your face, and it's the scanning software thinks that you look like Keira Knightley. Obviously you're not Keira Knightley, there's only one Keira Knightley. Unless of course you are Keira Knightley. If Keira Knightley is watching or listening to this, hi Keira Knightley, how are you? How does it feel to just be Keira Knightley? So let's reflect on some key points from this episode of the podcast. Key point number 1, fuck Facebook. The big F is terrifying. F for flop, F for failure. F for scary. Next point, facial recognition is very useful. Next point, facial recognition is very frightening. especially when you don't know when your data is being used, when biometric data is being used against you, if it's being taken without your consent, all that kind of stuff. Very spooky, very, very scary, very skeleton. Very skeleton. What am I talking about? Anyway, is there any more other points that I made during this? I know I spilled a lot, but I can't remember. It's that goldfish memory. But I do remember what I wanted to do next episode. I wanted to make the next episode about the Billboard Hot 100 because I did a speech at my last job about it, which is really random. So I have a lot of information about it, and I will do some more research because the rules have changed since I did that presentation. So I think I'll do that. If you're a patron, you'll be getting extra content this week related to facial recognition. I'll make a poll in the patron feed about what you want to know about. And then if you become a patron this week, you have access to the extra content from last week, which is what happens when you don't sleep at all. Very interesting to me and the homegirls. I think that brings me to the end of this episode. It's a bit of a shorter one than last week, but I think it's more succinct. I had a little bit more focus going on. The facial recognition concentration scan was giving me a green tick the whole time through. Thank you all so much for witching. Yeah, thank you so much for witching. And thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you haven't left a review, feel free to do that. And yeah, I will talk to you all next week. Peace out. Bye.